So leading into the national championship game, it was my thought that LSU had that collection of games against really good teams where Clemson had the one game against an elite team that was better than that collection of good teams. So the best data point for comparison was Clemson against Ohio State, of course, and trying to match up and see what Clemson could possibly do against LSU on both sides of the ball, but not knowing it being just one game, who brought their A game, who brought their B or their C, and just you have to assume that both teams brought their best. Maybe the officials didn't, but both teams brought their best. After seeing the national championship game, Kevin, do you think any differently about how it would have turned out Ohio State against LSU than you did a week ago, thinking, hey, this could have been Ohio State and LSU?
I don't know if I thought any differently. I mean, I would have felt that if that game would have happened, it would have been really fun to watch the LSU receivers against the Ohio State secondary. I think at that point there was a little bit of concern still with where Justin Fields' knee would have been at. I think if Ohio State would have gotten past Clemson, there still would have been a lot of issue in terms of being able to for not having that dual threat type of quarterback that Ohio State had been so successful with over the year. But, Ohio State and Clemson was such a close game. I think that Ohio State could have gone into an LSU game, and, every matchup's different, and we know that everything is about matchups, but I think the Buckeyes definitely could have played them very close as well. I don't know. I haven't allowed myself to, I guess, really arrive at that point yet to play the hypothetical of what that game would have truly looked like in terms of an outcome. But, I think that we were really dealing with three elite teams in the nation this year. And, while, we could really mince down on, who played what and so on and so forth. Those are the best three teams, in any combination of those three games those three teams would have created some excellent games.
What do you think, Steve?
Oh, I agree with Kevin. I think, man, it would have been one heck of a game. I think where Clemson may have struggled at times guarding the LSU receivers on the perimeter, I think the likes of Wade and Okudah and Arnett would have given LSU a much tougher time. I'm not sure that Joe Burrow throws for 440 yards or 6 touchdowns, whatever it was against Ohio State. I don't know. That's just my first thought. Trevor Lawrence did not play particularly well, is another thought. And again, I'm not going to say anything negative about him because it really doesn't. I mean, everyone saw the game. As the game went on, Clemson just couldn't get anything really established. And they were still in the game in the third quarter. I mean, it was still a tight game, but LSU just put them away. And I guess one of my thoughts watching that game was just, I guess, that those two teams, LSU and Clemson and Ohio State, those three teams in particular, are playing a different game, or at least in 2019, they were a cut above any and everybody else, and they were all playing a different game than the other 127 teams in the country, because I don't think anybody else, and it was borne out, nobody else could stay on the field with any of those three teams. So to me, the struggle to put yourself at that upper echelon and the work that goes into perfecting your craft and perfecting your offense and perfecting your defense to the point where people can't touch you and you make it look easy like LSU did, that is a lot of work goes into that. And people are coming out with their too early top 25s for next year. And Clemson is picked number one. I think people, who don't dig too deep, look at it and say they've got Trevor Lawrence, and they did beat Ohio State. At least, the final score was in their favor. But Ohio State played them right down to the wire and also outgained them in the game that they played against one another. And, of course, Ohio State has Justin Fields back. Those two schools right now seem to have all the momentum going into 2020 in terms of, I think, again, I haven't looked at every one of these lists. All the major national publications and websites put these lists out. And my inclination, the ones I've seen, is Clemson's 1 and Ohio State's 2, and Ohio State maybe 1 in a few of them. And I've thought about doing a little quick survey of that for our website, but I think that's all just born off the fact that they separated themselves. LSU obviously losing Joe Burrow, and I've seen that 7 guys off that team have already declared for the NFL, and maybe a few other ones are going to have to if they took too much money from OBJ there on the sideline after the game and can't pay it back. They're going to have to go pro as well. So, man, I guess one other thought, and I'll just throw this in there and add this to the list of things the playoff has got to get figured out. It's nice having former players down there and whatever, but there's no reason why former players are turning the thing into a spectacle. And if they can't behave, then they're not going to be welcome down there. What he did, let's say Ohio State gets in one day, he may have just killed it for Ezekiel Elliott and everybody else who wants to pal around and be part of that scene down on the sideline, because they can't have that. And they can't have what happened in the locker room with the police officer, and they can't have the smoking cigars and alcohol and these other things. It's just a little bit run amok right now. And I think, all that's got a time and a place. And I think that should be done privately away from the venue, as opposed to, we didn't see Ohio State carry on like that when they won it in 2014. So that's my first thought is add this to the list of things the playoffs got to get figured out, is proper security, proper protocols. No, we're not going to do that. Put that out. We're not going to do that. If you're going to smoke a cigar, you need to leave the building, get your stuff and go, because we're not going to do that. So, I don't know, just some thoughts. And I know I'm being an old man about it, but there's a time and place for everything.
Tony, thoughts about how this might have played out, especially after you saw LSU handle Clemson, especially in the fourth quarter?
Well, I'll go back to what Ryan Day said. He was asked the same question, how do you think you would have done against LSU? And he just smiled and said it would have been fun. And you could see in his eyes that he really meant it. And I think Ohio State would have matched up better. They have the better corners. They've got 3 corners who can play in the NFL, who will play in the NFL, and I think they would have matched up better. I'm not saying they would have been able to. I don't think you stop LSU's passing game, but I think they would have done better than Clemson. I also think JK and the Ohio State running game would have kept Joe Burrow off the field a little bit more. So that takes maybe a touchdown off the field, off the board there. So I think Ohio State would have had a very good chance to win that game. I don't think my mind changes. Going before the Fiesta Bowl, I felt Clemson or Ohio State had a better shot against Clemson, and Ohio State were both better than LSU. And clearly LSU is better than Clemson. I don't know. Like Ryan Day, it'd be fun to watch, because, Ohio State, their secondary calls themselves BIA, best in America. I think they showed very well against Clemson until Sean Wade was kicked out of the game. And it would have been fun to watch against Jamar Chase and Jefferson and those guys, and that defensive line getting after Joe Burrow and seeing how that affects his ability to throw. Clemson did pretty well early on, but gosh, how do you stop Joe Burrow in that passing game? I think Ohio State would have had a really good chance to slow him down enough, because LSU still has to stop Ohio State's offense, and as long as JK is on the field, I don't know that anybody could this year.